Go ahead.
It's the media virus spreading all around. We're a pack of morons stuck here on the ground. They feed us the lies while we just stand by, drowning in the noise as the truth walks by. It's the media virus taking control.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest tonight is living proof that rock bottom can be the foundation for an incredible comeback. He's a former homeless veteran who's been through multiple psych wards, civil commitments in 2 states, jail cells, and dark nights so black he tried to end it all twice. But through it all, he found a way back, or in his words, God found him, dragged him out of the gutter, and gave him a mission to help others who are struggling with mental illness, addiction, and the kind of hopelessness you can't Instagram filter away. He's the host of the Gutter Gospel podcast, where he has raw, unfiltered conversations about the battles people fight in the dark and how they can find hope even when the voice is in their head and sometimes their dead dad's voice tells them to give up. He's finishing his riveting memoir, The Gutter Gospel, The Road to Redemption. And let me tell you, the man's story is so real, it'll punch you right in the soul. If you've ever felt like you're too far gone, well, Mike will tell you, no, you're not. You can learn more about his mission at theguttergospel.com. And tonight, you're going to learn why this man is living proof that every day is really a gift. And that's why it's called the present. Give it up for our guest, the raw and unbreakable Mike Smith. Mike, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic, guys. I really want to thank you for having me on your show. It's been a great day, so I'd like to fill you in on what I've been up to today and, what's been going on in my life in the past and kind of take you through the steps and get you to modern day what's been happening. So, yeah, I'm ready to dive into it.
You seem kind of giddy about your news of the day. Tell us about what's going on, man.
I'm kind of a geek when it comes to this stuff. I just do a lot of Google searches and stuff, and I came across this one today called Invisible People. And man, I tell you what, that's like hitting the big time. I message those guys, and it's like, they're stoked to have me on, and they have like 1 billion people close to it that they reach with their with their podcast. So, it's like I already booked one a couple days ago that reaches 5 continents and 83 countries. So I'm coming basically out of the gutter, from having nothing, not even having a penny to my name, and all the trials like you touched on there, Matty, at the top. And, to come from that and now be able to share my message and offer hope to people that really are down and out. And it's such a change, for me. And it's been a good path here for several years now that I've been on that road and the road to redemption. You mentioned the book. I did get that published out in January with Brooklyn Publishers out in New York. It took me 30 years to write it, and I always say 60 years to live it because I was
real quick. I don't mean to interrupt you, but when you say out in January, is it out this next January or was it out last January?
No, I finished it in January and got it published. If you guys want to check it out, I give it away for free at the bottom of my website. It's in a PDF. So if you go to theguttergospel.com, scroll down the homepage, you will see that all you got to do is click on the PDF and it opens up for free for guys. So I give that away because, and then what I do in return, guys, is I have a donate now with a GoFundMe set up on the site as well. So you guys can donate to my mission if you want to give any amount, because I do it all off my disability check. That's how I finance everything. So, modern day, I fly out the final day of September to go to what's known as the ICVM Storytellers Conference to get my story turned into a true life movie. So, it just goes from point A, the gutter, to point B, the top. Yeah. And, but to fill in all the blanks is kind of the, we can kind of get into the details
just real
of
quick,
how it all transpired.
just because you brought it up, man, one of the silly questions that we have here is, who do you think would play you in the movie? So since you brought it up, who
Just
ideally?
at Mike there with glasses, I think Mike could be a good character fit for me, maybe with those glasses he's wearing. That'd be a good fit.
Mike's hiring information is in our credits. Mike does voice work. If you ever want his voice on your project, you can call 302-46 voice. So if you want to cast him, but I mean, as far as like, let's talk about celebrities. Shoot for the moon. Who would you want? Who do you like? Are you like Leonardo DiCaprio in Basketball Diaries type of?
No, I'm thinking Josh DeMille or Demal or whatever he's known as, the guy that was in Transformers. Because I live in Fargo, and that would make my son he'd be all giddy if he could meet him and have him play in the movie. That would just have him on the top of the world. So actually, guys, as fate would have it, I do have 2 producers and directors already interested in my story. So I've joined ICVM probably about 2 years ago, and I was supposed to go out to the conference. It was in DC last year, but I had a good buddy of mine I was taking care of that was dying of cancer. So I missed the conference last year, but we have family in Florida, and I have a lot of people that are going to be cheering me on from Fargo to go to that show. And I have a booth set up there to network with all big wigs. So if you guys just want to pull up, all you got to do is type in ICV as in Victor M.com, and it'll pull it up. There's a little video in there when you scroll down on the homepage of that site that shows you everything that's going to be taking place at that conference. It's a golden opportunity to not only get my story out there, but to get the financing for it and everything else. There's people from all over the world show up for that thing. So 4 days of fun and sun right by Disney World. So I've been stoked about that coming up for quite a while now.
That's something to be stoked about. Just in case you're looking for parts in the movie, if you need a guy to play Moses, I've been told I look like Moses. I've been told I look like. You could pull that off, Matty. Like, if you need a guy to play Kenny Rogers, I'm your man.
There you
Michael
go.
McConnell,
the gambler.
Dude, right? I know when to hold them. I know when to fold them. I know when to walk away. Yeah. I know when to run. So let's start kind of from the beginning then, man. Where were you born? Sure. Like, where are you from? Where were you born?
Yeah, I was born in Aberdeen, South Dakota, guys, and my dad was a manager for the JCPenney clothing store. There's 5 kids in my family. I'm the 4th, and so I just have the little sister Paula underneath me. I have my oldest sister's a doctor out in Duluth, Teresa. My next is my sister Julie. She took over for me at the transit system. I'll get into this later. I was fired from there, and then as manager, but I got her into that gig and she's running the whole thing now. And then I got a brother, Pat, who lives down in St. Louis. He's my only brother. So yeah, Pat's a cool guy, man. He had this idea back in the day when we moved from, I was only 3 when we moved out of Aberdeen to Sauk Center. And Sauk Center, we lived there for a few years before we moved up to this little dive called Barnesville, Minnesota, about 2,500 people. And my dad started his own clothing store up there when I was 12. Right. And Pat was working on a turkey farm over in a town about 20 miles from where we were at. And he had this bright idea to come and bring all this wiring home from the turkey farm. And he was going to grow turkeys in our garage to make bucks. That was his big entrepreneurial idea. And I'm like, where do we park the car? But anyway, that's Pat, But so let's get into this. When I was, like I said, we moved from Sauk up to Barnesville because my dad was fired as the manager when we were living in Sauk. And so fast forward, we get there. I'm 12 years old. I get introduced to alcohol and drugs by my only friend in high school by the name of John Hansen. And we were smoking weed and drinking. And that I write about in the first chapter of my book. I call it the first bloody gutter, my first bloody gutter, because I wound up getting so hammered with him that I fell face down in the gutter and broke open my chin and bled all over the place. So that was my introduction to alcohol. So
literally broken in
yeah,
together.
and then yeah, exactly. So then 3 years fast forward, my dad drops dead of a massive heart attack when I was 15 years of age. So I got really depressed on that. Yeah, I got really down in the dumps. And like you talked about in the intro, I'm a 2-time suicide survivor. That was the first time I tried to take my life, was shortly after he died. And thankfully, the way I tried to commit suicide was just out of this world crazy. I loaded up a car full of my drunken friends when we were partying in our house because my mom was at work trying to take the clothing store over and run it to survive, and she was tanking. So anyway, loaded up a car full of my drunken buddies and took them out 100 miles an hour, backed up on this gravel road and punched it, hit this interstate, blind spots on both sides. So not only did I not care if I died, but if I took people out with me. So that's kind of how dark it was for me back then. And then, after nobody would be around me in high school because they all thought I was out of my mind, nuts and depressed. So I didn't have any friends at that point. Even John left me. So, but yeah, life moved on, graduated high school, tried college for a year, and flunked out of that. But I did meet a really cool guy that was like my pot supplier named Don Matthews. And so Donnie and I were partying together in college. And I flunked out of that quick. So now I had all student loans backed up and everything. So I joined the military, man. I joined the Air Force because my dad was in the Air Force in Korea. And so I get in the military. And if you guys have never served, it's kind of a joke. They have you fill out this thing once you get stationed, or you're in your schooling, I should say. They give you this thing they call a dream sheet. And the old saying in the military is you're dreaming if you think anybody looks at those selections that you pick. If you want to, pick your favorite base ideas, like I wanted to go overseas. And man, I never got out of the state of Texas, had my basic training in Lackland, had my schooling in Brooks, and then stationed in Wichita Falls up in Tornado Alley at Shepherd. So now I got in with a bunch of guys in the military for 2.5 years, smoking weed with them, drinking, partying, having a good time. And of course, that was during the Reagan administration back in the 80s when Nancy had her big war on drugs. So they booted all of us sorry asses out because this guy came on base one night trying to sell a pound of pot to an undercover guy. And as soon as he got busted, he was naming names of people he knew that smoked weed. And I was on the list. So I moved back to Fargo-Moorhead area and was really kind of down and out. I was out at a bar one night, and as fate would have it, I ran into Donnie, and Donnie and I decided it would be a good idea because we were both kind of struggling to survive financially if we would rent this little house over in Moorhead together and grow high-grade marijuana and sell that for our income, so to subsidize our income. But Donnie was a good guy, man. He's a 5th degree black belt in Taekwondo, so he got me trained up to be in the best physical shape I'd ever been in. And you can read about this on the sample chapters on my website. I posted 2 sample chapters up there about what happened the summer of '88 when my dad, who had been dead for 8 years, appeared to me when I wasn't on anything. I was just home alone. And middle of the day, it just you can read that where it says that he appeared and told me to blow my worthless effing head off, and cycled really severely just hearing all these voices and crap. So you gotta really read it on the website, because what happened was, guys, when I got my book published out in New York with Brooklyn Publishers, like I mentioned, I told those guys, I don't want you to edit anything on my website that I already had written about, because it was raw. It was the raw truth. It was unfiltered. And because, of course, when your ghostwriters get a hold of your memoir, they kind of sugarcoat it, and they don't, they give it a lighter edge. And I didn't like that. The other thing I didn't like about them was they said, well, Mike, you're crazy because you're not charging people for this book. after you put all that work into it, right? And I said, hey man, if somebody calls me crazy, that's one of the best compliments I can get after all the hell I've been through in life.
You've been called worse, right? Now let me. I just have a couple of. Now was your family particularly religious? Was your dad a religious guy?
No, we grew up in the Roman Catholic faith, you know, and I was an altar boy, did that gig, and all you name it. We did the whole thing, go to mass on Sundays, and but then my dearly departed mom, God rest her soul, she flipped out when I left the Catholic Church to go to a more evangelical kind of line of faith. So, and that's kind of where I'm at these days too. I attend a church that is really a kind of a not in keeping with the Catholic faith at all. And my mom thought, of course, in her dying days, thought I was going to hell because I left the Catholic Church. But,
yeah, I'm raised Catholic as well.
Yeah,
and I've been really looking forward to talking to you because, I like this podcast here is named after my first real band. Like my first real band was called Media Virus. But when I was learning, I wanted to start a band. I didn't name this band. It was just my first band. But I always wanted to call it band Jesus Wears Chucks.
And
Jesus Wears Chucks, and the concept was Jesus would be down, like he'd be like at the punk shows, talking to the skinheads and talking to the junkies and talking to the whores. And and talking to them and trying to get them to. He might even be in a band. He might be the front man trying to tell his story, as opposed to I say this a lot. Like I love Jesus a lot. Like from what I've heard of him, it's just his fan club's usually run by a pack of assholes. You know what I mean? Like. And for me, like I have this idea of what grace and mercy is, and the people the religious, the people who were ultra religious in my youth, I didn't trust them. They were all high and mighty and shit, and unattainable, they were unattainable, they were unapproachable, they were they had the right to judge you. And only God has the right, that's a divine right, and you are not divine. But
exactly.
That's kind of my, what the kind of temperature was. And then my secondary question is like, how was mental illness viewed in your family growing up? Did you have any family members that displayed?
My grandma on my dad's side was institutionalized. And my dad tried to commit suicide when I was 2, tried to hang himself. So, it runs in the family. And now it just gets passed down, that the mental illness gene, I don't know if that's even a thing or not, but I'm just talking out of my rear end about what I've seen in my life. That's 3 generations right there that it's affected. So, if it's not a gene or whatever, I don't know what to call it or what to label it or how to really tackle it. But, what I wound up with in my life, and you hit on this in the intro, was not just cycling and being on those psych units and stuff, but man, I tell you, let me just stop a second and say this. You guys will really appreciate this. I'm on a psych unit right before they put me into my first civil commitment. I'm sitting up there with this dude that I really started getting to know, and we would talk faith or talk about God and stuff. And he goes, you know what, Mike, I don't know what it is about you, man, but you, to me, remind me of that guy in the Bible, Job, that I don't know why I'm saying this to you, but you have nothing in life right now. And I just think God's going to turn around, man, and bless you one day, like so many millionfold over, that it's just that's just what I'm believing about you. There's just something about you. And that's what's happened, and I didn't know it at the time because I had to go through all those struggles and stuff. but there's so much to share, man. I could talk to you guys for hours about the journey because it flows out of me because it's so real and it's so raw and it's so unapologetic. And you're exactly right, Matty, about what you said about Jesus. You know, I attend this thing. We're doing it again tomorrow night. We read out of the Life Recovery Bible, and that's really my gig these days. I enjoy the most because, you know, it's like God's view of addicts. You know, God doesn't judge him and hate him and think, you know, oh, well, you just keep screwing up, man. I'm cutting you off. I'm reminded of the story of the prodigal son, you know, how he ran off and was, you know, partying with whores and giving away all of his money and doing that, this and that. And then he got, you know, came to his senses and ran back to his father and was welcomed with open arms. And that's kind of what I relate to. And that's why I named my project what I did. I actually thought of the gutter gospel like 3-4 years ago when I reserved that domain, but I didn't know how to actually put it all together until, you know, just this year after my good friend died of cancer. I was just down and depressed. He died December 14th, this past December. And I just was in a big pity party for 2 weeks about Brad passing. And I was like, first of the year rolled around, and I just said, man, enough of this crap. I'm gonna do something to honor Brad, to honor his memory. And so that's when I got my book finally published. That's when I started researching the podcasting thing. So then fast forward to tonight, voila, look what's happened in between all those months. So God's just been that good and faithful. And that dude in the psych unit was exactly right. You know, now I'm able to share my message all around the world. And I've been on these podcasts now. Like I just told you guys, I got booked on this one that I'm supposed to do here coming up September 11th that reaches 5 continents and 83 countries just on one. So you can about imagine the impact I'm having by just sharing my testimony and being honest about, you know, the struggles and saying, hey man, life really sucked for me for decades. And, you know, I had to go through all the hell on earth that could be thrown at me. And I didn't give up. You know, that's my message for everybody. It's like, you know, don't pull that freaking trigger. You know, suicide rates now, guys, with fentanyl and everything, and people being so down and out in their life and having such low self-esteem that they're just giving up. That's who I'm speaking to in my shows. You know,
and you have a broad experience. So I mean, when someone says, "Oh yeah, but Mike, you don't understand. I have this." Well, you know what? I had something similar. It was this. You know, you've got a lot to work with. It sounds like.
Amen. Yes, I do, my friend. You're exactly right, Mike, because it's like, you know, hey, how many people, first of all, guys, look at it this way. How many veterans, if you want to look this up to prove me wrong, you can. How many veterans have 100% disability? 20% is the answer, give or take, right? So that puts me in a pretty rarefied air right there. Now, factor in how many veterans commit suicide every day. And that answer is hovering around 22 per day. Military veterans taking their own life, giving up, right? That says that right here on my shirt. 22 veterans per day is what that says, right? It's brand awareness. I wear my custom shirts everywhere when I'm going out in public, and people stop me all the time and say, what's this all about? You know, so locally, I'm doing my thing. On the internet, I'm doing my thing. And hopefully we hit the documentary getting out there so that we can reach even more people and say, you know what, man, if this guy can still survive all that and be here, still standing, maybe he can offer some hope and some recovery advice for people that have been in the gutter in their life. And I'm really proud of that book. If you guys don't read anything else, when you get to that free book on the website, go to page 70, scroll down to that, because that talks about when Jesus appeared to me in my dream one night, and it's the truth of what happened. And in there, when you read it, it talks about how people in this day and age have such low self-esteem that when they look in the mirror, they don't value their own life as much as like a worthless, muddy, gutter type penny that's been thrown away and just put on the trash bin of life, right? And that's yeah, if you read that, it talks about how you spend as much time as you can with that one person. So I'll share this with you guys. As far as people ask me this all the time, how come you're not on Facebook? How come you're not on Instagram and all this other crap? And I'm like, I'm not a big believer in social media, man. I think it's an addiction that people get too into. They post all this crap on there. I know people close to me, I won't name them here because they'll get offended, but that's a big part of their life, is wasting all their time on that crap. And it's like trying to get likes and trying to get all this. That's not
I get your point, but you have a legitimate message. You know what I mean? You have a legitimate purpose, and you have this fire, in your belly. You're the prime candidate for someone who should be, pumping their message, out to the world in any facet. If if anywhere needs you, it's those places.
You know why I'm not on there? Because here's the truth. They kicked me out.
Yeah.
They banned me from Facebook and Instagram. Can you believe that? Because their algorithms are. Yeah, that's why I'm not on there. I'd love to be on there because it's like, okay, what did I do that offended them so much? All I'm doing is telling the truth. That's why they didn't like it, because everybody else on there is bullshit artists talking about how great their day is, and how great life is. And it's like, that's not me, man. I've been through the battles, and I'm just honest with it. So it's like, well, there's something wrong with this guy. Let's boot him off. Who the hell knows? I don't care. Like I said, because these guys that I'm doing these podcasts with, the bigger ones, they're like, they've got all the followers, so they post my stuff,
Right.
So it's still getting out there. So
absolutely.
I just don't personally have one set up. So, but yeah.
So you talk really openly about your mental illness and your addictions. Now, do you think they're interrelated, or do you was it the mental illness that had you self-medicating, or do you think it was the substance uses that might have contributed to your mental illness?
That's like saying tomato. I honestly don't know how to answer that, because people I met people that have said it both ways. They've said, hey, because you have all these mental health issues, or you have mental health issues at the beginning, so then you use to medicate yourself. So like I said, it's tomato. I don't honestly know the answer.
You're not even interested in finding out.
It sounds like it's kind of chicken and egg at this point, right?
I don't know. It was a question that popped in my head.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it's kind of a topic for debate, I guess, but I can't answer it here because it's just, everybody, I'll share this with you guys. I did a podcast here about a month ago, and the topic, or the title of their podcast, was Everybody's Addicted to Something. Okay. That was the name of the podcast. And they have like tens of thousands of people roughly they're talking to. And she sends me a message the day we're going to tape. And she says, Mike, I can't make it tonight. Can you put me off for like 3 days, and then I'll have you on? So I'm like, yeah, cool. Whatever. I'm here for whenever you guys want me here. So when we do, before we taped 3 days later, she said, I have to confess something to you. The reason we couldn't do it 3 nights ago is because that day we were removed from our house by the sheriff because my husband has a bad gambling addiction and didn't pay the mortgage for several months, and I didn't know anything about it. So now I'm living with my parents and doing my podcast thing. So there you go. It's like everybody is addicted to something. That's why the message, the gutter gospel, resonates with so many people, because it's like everybody's been down in the gutter in life at one point or the other. Most of them through adolescence had a hell of a time trying to get through that because of all the challenges. It just so happened when I was going through adolescence is when my dad died. And that's what put me on my path and my downward spiral from that point on in life. So, but yeah.
So that's what sent you down that path, but what was the point where you knew you needed help? Now, I know there's a difference between the point where you need help and the point where you actually seek out help. But do you know the point where you decided you were like, ah, Christ, I need help?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you what happened, guys. This is leading up to the civil commitments. The guy that said the analogy about me being like Job. My dog died. I was really close to Oscar. That SOB was mean and ornery as could be. And anybody that come around me, man, he would attack him. And he went blind. And man, I tell you what, after he passed away, I had him for several years. I was so depressed. I said, man, I tell you what, Sue, this is my wife. I said, I got to go to St. Cloud, which is a big regional VA center about a 2-hour drive from Fargo. And so I said, I got to go down there. And so I sought out help. This is answering your question, right? I said, I need to go. So we went down there, and I was, the one thing with me, guys, is I always struggled to sleep, and that leads me into the cycling of stuff. So in my life, right? And so I go down there because I'm really hurting, and they give me my own room in the St. Cloud VA for 4 weeks. And I think I'm feeling better, but I wasn't. I was cycling because I wasn't sleeping. And so my doctor said, well, let's have you see this other doctor before we discharge you. And that other doctor came in and talked to me briefly and said, well, I think it's best if we put you on that psych unit for further evaluation. And now I'm going somewhere with all this, and it's going to answer your question about seeking help. So they put me up there for 5 more weeks, where I met the guy that told me that thing about Job. And then so now they're extending my stay, and I got pissed. I'm like, what is this all about? I came down here seeking help on my own accord, and now you're going to put me, they said, now we're going to put you in a homeless shelter, and we're going to place a civil commitment on you to where we're going to stick you out in Annandale, Minnesota, which is out in the middle of freaking nowhere, guys. And it's all run down, and they couldn't fund the thing or finance it to even have us out there. My big Easter feast when I was out there was a half a banana and a half a cup of milk. That's what our big Easter supper was, because they couldn't afford groceries. The staff would always not show up for work, so the people that were staying there were actually feeding each other. It was just a freaking zoo, right? So I'm going through all this hell, so I made a break for it. I said, the hell with this, right? I'm getting back up to Fargo. So I hitched a ride, and it's in the book. That's 2019, the year in review is the name of that chapter. I write about it. But it was hell on earth, man. Then I get back up here, and my wife's waiting for me at the house, saying, with 3 cop cars, saying, "Oh, okay. Well, what are you going to do now? Because you're still cycling, and I don't want you at the house." So I said, "Well, just let me stay one night because I need to sleep, right?" And so she agreed to that and went and stayed with her parents. And I was not sleeping. I was calling the cops to get me food, right? And they said, enough of this shit. We're gonna put you in the county lockup for the night. So then I wound up in jail, right? And I'm in there cycling now even more severely. And my doctor from the VA comes in like 3-4 days later. They let me rot in there, sees me in now I'm completely naked, covered head to toe in my own feces, cycling severely, So they stick me in the state mental institution for 6 weeks. They committed me, right? They put me out in the state hospital, 100 miles, Jamestown, North Dakota is from Fargo, straight west, right? In chains. They put me in shackles and put me in the back of a paddy wagon, and they would shuttle me every week, guys. This is the truth, and this is in the book, that they would take me from the state hospital every week. They would always chain me, and they would bring me back to Fargo in front of a judge and make me beg for my freedoms to be released from the state hospital so that I could return to society. So even society rejected me. You talk about hell on earth. There you go. So when you asked the question, Matty, that was a long way of me answering it, saying, because I went through all that shit, when I did reach out and honestly was seeking help, I'm never going to do it again after that experience.
So that was you reaching out for help, was going to the VA, getting 4 weeks, getting 5 more weeks, mandatory. Then why did they put you in a homeless shelter?
Because they thought I was so far mentally gone that was, and I was shaking my head. Nobody knew that. And when I share that on these podcasts, everybody's asking that same question. Like, that makes no sense, you know? And the only thing that I can think of, guys, this is the truth. The only thing I can even think of is that God had a plan. Because I do believe in God, that would resonate someday. He would use that for his glory and say, this guy had to be put through the freaking ringer in life and put through all this shit. And he is here talking about it openly and honestly and saying, you know what? That's why you cannot pull that freaking trigger as depressed and down as you are in life, because Mike isn't giving up on life yet, you know, after being mistreated by society and having everybody turn their back on me. Everybody. I mean, everybody.
So how did you get out? How did you finally convince the judge to
basically I lied my ass off. I said, you know, that, oh no, doc, I'm feeling good. And, you know, they were working on trying to get my meds balanced and everything else, but I don't honestly know how I got out of there. They were probably sick of me thinking, what is this guy doing still here? But when they got me out of there, it wasn't like I was out of the woods. Okay. They took me from there. Once I got out of the state hospital, now they stick me in a second homeless shelter. Okay. So that's the rest of the story. And this is the road to redemption and how it all comes full circle. Okay. They stick me in another homeless shelter. This one's back in Fargo, and there's veterans in it upstairs. It's a 2-level building, and they put the criminals that were transitioning out of county jails in the first level. And so the veterans and the criminals would eat all their meals together. Okay. So I'm doing that, still not free, right, from going through all this stuff. And so what happened was, one day the lady that worked at that homeless shelter came into my room, and I was just laying in my bed staring up at the ceiling, doing nothing, just killing time. And she goes, "Hey Mike, you got some mail." And I'm thinking to myself, mail? Who in the hell would be mailing me? I don't have anybody in my life. I don't have any friends. I don't have family. I don't have anything. Right. So I open up the mail, and there's 2 big checks in there from the military for full service connection. I got 100% service disability connection through the VA, and 2 big checks for several thousands of dollars. So I just packed up all my shit as quick as I could and hightailed it out of there. Went out and bought myself, with my VA benefits now, a nice twin home with a park in the back and all this other stuff. And it was like, got my act together, my meds got balanced, and now it all came full circle. And that is how my life is now balanced and fruitful and surviving. I have my survival tale with all the scars from those times, physically, mentally, emotionally, you know, I mean, you name it, I had to go through hell. So, but yeah, it was nothing I would wish upon anybody. So that's my story. But yeah.
So the wife in the story is now the ex-wife?
Well, that's kind of a strained deal that I won't get into very much here, but yeah, it's pretty much over. Yeah.
I think I just sorry.
No, that's okay.
So where was your spiritual turning point? Like, when did you, was it that dude that kind of said something to you, and then that check came, and then you're like, maybe there is a God?
Well, it was before that, to be honest with you. You know, it goes back many years, and my journey in my book was, you know, something that I had to write about in order for it to make sense. Because, you know, after when I first met my wife, the summer of '88, you know, this is going way back. I left the Catholic Church and became involved in like a very fundamentalist Christian church. I became a born again Christian in the fall of '88, but then I was sober for a number of years, but then I fell back into the drinking and everything else. And I journal all about that, and it's all in the book in the interest of time. But yeah, I've always had a belief in God, you know. It's just that I was tested so much in my life, and I always kept the faith. One time, I'll share this with you guys. You'll really appreciate this. That I had a job many years ago in the '90s, driving a van to these medical clinics delivering supplies, and I was listening to this Christian talk show radio program. And there's two Christian psychiatrists, and they said, "You know what? I got one said to the other guy, he goes, you know what, Frank, I have 7 kids. All of them are doctors, lawyers, professors, are high achievers in their fields. And then I got my second youngest, like me in life, is bipolar." And he said, "I tell you what, there's something about that guy that's just one day going to outshine the rest of them by far." And that is, like I shared with you guys, that's kind of my deal these days. Is my oldest sister's a doctor, but she's not out spreading the word or, you know, sharing her testimony. I am, and I've been on every continent now almost, and, you know, several hundreds of countries giving my message out. So, you know, I think I've kind of surpassed her in life. At least I think I'm in a much better spot than she is, you know, getting the message out. So,
Yeah.
I bet you didn't bargain for all this, did you guys?
Mike, I want to, you know, thank you for bringing your story and your honesty here tonight. I do, you know,
Absolutely.
it's captivating. Now, just real quick, if you had 30 seconds, an opportunity to talk to your younger self, what do you think you would say?
That's a good question. I'll tell you what I think, and it comes right out of that song I love so much by Mercy Me. Have you heard it, Dear Younger Me? You can get that on YouTube. Yeah, look up Mercy Me, Dear Younger Me. Is that the artist is Mercy Me, and that's their song, Dear Younger Me. And anyway, with that being said, I wouldn't change a thing, because if I did, you know, here's the analogy I have with it, guys. I can help people. I can help so many people with my message these days. And the analogy I'm going to give you, since grew up a Minnesota boy, is my favorite artist is Prince, right? And there was this documentary about Prince after he had passed away with a fentanyl overdose a few years back. They did a documentary, and they were interviewing his best friend, and his best friend and his photographer. The two of them both spoke about it. And first, the best friend said, you know, hey, had Prince ever, if he just never would have been famous and just worked in a factory, had a couple kids, I think he would have died a lot happier, man, because he was so miserable in life and alone. And then his photographer said, I'll never forget, we were over in Spain taking this photo of him in his designer suit. And I thought to myself at the time, he looks like the loneliest man on the planet. So I wouldn't change a thing to answer your question. Yeah. Looking back on it, because it gives me my mission field. It does. It gives me my mission field. So
I'd probably give him some lottery. I'd tell my younger self some lottery numbers, maybe a couple of Super Bowl winners. You know what I mean?
Well,
I might bend the rules a little bit.
You know, those guys that win the whole
by Amazon.
A lot of the free winners wind up middle of the night.
You know what's funny is I used to work. I used to work in an office that was a construction. Like if you needed something done on your home, you'd call, and we'd answer the phone. And then there was a guy who, after the salesman went out, he would try to, if the salesman didn't close the deal, this guy would try to close the deal. But I come to find out that back in the 80s, he had won something like $80,000. And back in the 80s, $80,000 was a lot of money. And I was like, And so and he's telling us about it, and he's like, so what happened to all the money? What'd you do with it? And he was like, meth.
Yeah.
He did $80,000 worth of meth.
Yeah.
He's like, that's it. That's all. He's like, I bought some cars, and he's like, you know how I made the money? and he's like, you know what I got into? He would run that scam where you just bill people for light bulbs.
Oh yeah.
And you never send them the light bulb. You just send them a bill. He would do that. He was fantastic. But
so he could get more meth, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But thanks for coming on. We really, showing us that it doesn't matter, how deep the gutter you've been in, there's still hope, there's still purpose, and there's still a reason to get up and fight every day. And if you're listening right now and you're in a dark place, remember, you're not alone. And if you want to learn more about what's that?
Matty, before you go, guys, I never even got into the second sample chapter. If you want to know how bad it really got, read that. It's called My Tour in Hell, Forever Damned. You read that, and then I'll share this with you in closing. I hand out my business email for people that are going through it. It's just mike@theguttergospel.com. If you think that you don't have anybody that you can trust, or you don't want to give out any information, you contact me directly, and I'd be happy to help you. mike@theguttergospel.com.
Yeah, there you go. mike@theguttergospel.com. You can also check out theguttergospel.com. You can read the book, The Road to Redemption. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate, you coming on. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate telling the story and being so open and vulnerable with us today. And I hope you had a good time, man.
Oh, I really did with you guys. Yeah. I'll have to come back on after the conference and fill you in on what happened.
We'd love that. We'd absolutely love that. So, keep in touch with us, Mike, and we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you again.
Yeah, we'll see you on the funny side, guys. Right? See you on the flip side.
Yeah, man. You have a great day, man.
Ladies and gentlemen,
you guys do. Appreciate it, buddy. Take care. God bless.
Take care.
God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been this 248th B block on the Media Virus podcast. We'll catch you in the C block shortly. This episode of the Media Virus podcast is brought to you by 302-46 Voice. That's 302-46 Voice. If you want my voice on your project, dial 302-46 Voice today. Don't forget to check out our sister show on the Media Virus Podcast Network, Stepmoms Without Children. Join Matty Rockdef as she takes a deep dive into the fascinating people she meets and thinks that you should meet too. Find Stepmoms Without Children at themediavirus.com, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your fine podcasts. Special thanks to mysportsreports.com and delawaresports.com, delivering regional sports coverage straight to your devices via stream and podcast. Learn more at mysportsreports.com and delawaresports.com. If you wish to sponsor the Media Virus podcast, email your contact information to pml@themediavirus.com with the subject line sponsor, or leave us a message at 646-VIRUS-01. On behalf of the infection team and our feckless leader, Matty Rockdef, I'm the Reverend Professor Mike Latoris, coming to you live high atop Uncle Butch Studios, with one hand firmly on the pulse and the other clawing for a shred of sanity. This has been the Media Virus Podcast. We'll be back next week. Find us at themediavirus.com, on social media, or download us now from your favorite podcast platform.